Hi, I'm Tamra. My family didn't just take me to court, they erased me. They forged my name, sold my home, and then looked me in the eyes and called me trash in boots. My stepmom smirked, my father turned away, and my sister stayed silent, as if I'd never been theirs at all. But one paper, just one, changed everything. Want to know what made a judge say, "Lock the doors, no one leaves"? Before we dive in, tell me, what time are you listening and where from? Drop a comment below. I read every one. I'd been staring at that iron gate for what felt like an hour, my suitcase digging into my palm, boots still dusty from my last base visit. The winter air bit through my jacket, but that wasn't why I was trembling. This was my family's house, or at least it used to be. The antebellum columns, the wraparound porch, the oak trees in the yard. All of it belonged to my grandfather. He once told me this place would always be my home, and yet as I stood there, I felt like an intruder. I rang the bell. For a moment, there was nothing. Then a flicker in the window. My father, Richard, looked out. I knew that silhouette anywhere, tall and stiff as ever. I raised my hand in a small wave, but he didn't move, didn't even open the door. A few seconds later, the intercom crackled to life, and Valora's voice, sharp, cold, cut through the static. "You don't belong here anymore," she said. I blinked, certain I'd heard wrong. "Valora, it's me. I just got back. I need to see Dad. Please." Her reply was quick, like she'd rehearsed it. "Richard doesn't want to see you. None of us do." For a moment, I thought this had to be some kind of cruel joke. I'd spent years overseas, most of them in places people like Valora only saw on the news. I'd written home when I could, left messages when I couldn't. And now, standing in front of the house I used to fall asleep in after climbing those very oak trees, I was being told I didn't belong. The gate clicked shut. The sound was final, like a cell door. I stayed frozen there, staring at the locked entrance, hoping someone, anyone, would come out and say this was a mistake. No one did. I ended up sitting on the curb, duffel bag at my feet, clutching the one thing I couldn't leave behind, a photo of my mom. Her smile still lit up that picture like it had when she was alive. God, I needed her now. She always knew how to talk me down when the world didn't make sense. I glanced up and saw the sign on the lawn, "For sale." It felt like another slap. My grandfather promised me this house. He made me believe I'd always have a place here, even when I was halfway across the world, fighting wars that left scars no one at home could see, but the sign said otherwise. And if it was up for sale, it meant they'd made decisions without me. Decisions about my home, my family, my life. I sat there until my legs ached, letting the cold settle into my bones. Finally, I dragged myself up and checked my phone. There was a family mediation meeting scheduled for later that afternoon at a local legal office. I hadn't wanted to go, but now I needed answers. The office smelled like coffee and old carpet. Valora and Callista were already there when I walked in. Valora looked like she'd stepped out of some catalog, hair perfect, expensive jewelry flashing under the fluorescent lights. Callista didn't meet my eyes. My father was there too, seated in the corner, silent, like an ornament in his own life. Valora gave me a once-over, her eyes catching on my scuffed boots and my faded service jacket. I didn't miss the way her lip curled. "She wore a uniform once. Now she's just trash in boots," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room went silent. My sister shifted in her chair, still refusing to look at me. My father didn't even flinch. The words hit harder than any insult I'd ever heard on the battlefield. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I walked out before the heat in my face turned into tears. Back in my car, I gripped the photo of my mom so tight the edges bent. I replayed Valora's words over and over, each repetition burning deeper. They thought I was trash? Fine. Let them. I stared at my phone, scrolling through old contacts. People who knew me, people who'd seen me fight and wouldn't dismiss me like I was nothing. They locked me out like I was nothing, I whispered, feeling the words settle like steel in my chest. But this isn't over. Not by a long shot. I didn't know it then, but the real betrayal was still waiting for me. A week passed, like I was walking underwater. Every morning, I told myself I wouldn't drive by the house again, but by afternoon I was sitting in my car, engine idling at the curb, staring through the wrought iron gate like a ghost. That morning was different. There were 2 moving trucks in the driveway and a silver Lexus with a discreet realtor's logo on the side. I knew then that the for sale sign wasn't an empty threat. They weren't just posturing. They were erasing me. I parked a block away and walked to the county registry office. It smelled like paper and old coffee, a quiet kind of bureaucratic misery. A young clerk with kind eyes noticed me fumbling with the public computer terminal and walked over. "Looking up a property transfer?" she asked. "Yes, 1450 Waverly Lane," I said. My voice cracked and I hated myself for it. She tapped at the keyboard, then slid the screen toward me. "It transferred 3 months ago. Here's the recorded deed." I scanned the page. The house had been transferred to a company called Ravencrest Holdings LLC. My stomach dropped when I saw my own name listed as the seller. I hadn't signed a thing. My signature was there, but it was wrong, curved where my hand had always been steady, sloppy where I was precise. It was a forgery, and a bad one at that. I took out my phone and snapped pictures of every page. The clerk hesitated. "Do you need to talk to an attorney? Because this doesn't look right." "I will," I said, my voice flat. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. I left the office and drove straight to the house. The realtor was in the middle of staging, fluffing pillows in the living room like it wasn't full of memories. She tried to stop me at the door. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to—" "Move," I snapped, pushing past her. My boots thudded on the wood floors that used to creak under my mother's steps. Richard stood in the foyer, dressed like he was heading to a board meeting. Valora lingered at the foot of the stairs, arms crossed, watching like this was entertainment. "What did you do?" I demanded. "I saw the documents. My name was on the deed transfer, my signature. But I didn't sign anything." Richard didn't flinch. "You left," he said evenly. "You abandoned this family." "We simply made it official." I took a step toward him. "You know that's fraud. You know I didn't sign those papers. How could you even—" "You are no daughter of mine," he cut me off, his voice so calm it burned worse than if he'd screamed. "You don't belong here." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It felt like my ribs had been crushed in a vice. Valora tilted her head, lips curled in that little smirk she wore like armor. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," she said sweetly. "You're embarrassing yourself." It took everything I had not to lunge at her. My hands shook so badly I had to stuff them into my jacket pockets. I turned and walked out, my boots dragging like they weighed 100 pounds each. I sat in my car, staring at the house. My house. My grandfather once told me it would always be mine, that it was a piece of our family legacy. I could still hear his voice, see him sitting on the porch swing with a glass of sweet tea, telling me I'd always have a place there. Now that place was gone. I fished out my mom's photo from my bag, the one I kept in a worn leather frame. "What would you do, Mom?" I whispered. But all I heard was the hum of the car engine. I sat there until the sun dipped low and the realtor's car finally pulled out of the driveway. My reflection in the rearview mirror didn't even look like me anymore. Drawn, hollow-eyed, someone who'd been gutted and left behind. I drove to a diner off the highway, the kind with sticky menus and strong coffee. I slid into a booth, opened my laptop, and wrote down everything. Raven Crest Holdings, the date of the transfer, the forged signature. I pulled up lists of attorneys and jotted down names. If they wanted me gone, they were going to have to fight harder than this. They took my name off the papers, but I wasn't done writing my story. I didn't realize then how dirty they were willing to play, until Valora showed me just how far she'd go. 2 weeks later, a manila envelope arrived at the little rental I'd been staying in. No return address, no markings, just my name written in an unfamiliar hand. I opened it, half expecting some legal notice or a realtor flyer. Instead, I found pieces of myself torn apart. Inside was a photocopy of my military psychological evaluation, not the whole file, just a handful of pages, highlighted in garish yellow. Phrases leapt out at me. Difficulty adjusting to civilian life. Episodes of heightened anxiety. Needs ongoing support. All true in context, none of it damning. But stripped of the whole picture, those words became weapons. A single sheet of printer paper slipped out from between the pages. Typed, not handwritten. If you keep pushing, everyone will know what you really are. My hands shook as I set it down. They'd gone after my service record. My private battles. The scars I'd kept hidden even from most of my friends. I'd survived deployments, lost comrades, and stared down the worst parts of humanity. But this violation, cut deeper than any battlefield wound. I sat at the small kitchen table, staring at that note like it might come alive and strangle me. For a moment I couldn't breathe. My own family had done this. Valora, with her plastic smiles, Richard, with his cold detachment, and maybe others. I needed an ally. Callista. She was older, polished, the one who'd always mediated between Dad and me when Mom wasn't around. If anyone in that house had a shred of conscience left, it had to be her. I called her. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice tight. "Tamra, why are you calling me?" "Because I need my sister," I said. "Please, just meet me. 1 cup of coffee." There was a long pause, then a sigh. "Fine. Downtown. 2 o'clock. The cafe smelled of cinnamon and burnt espresso, the kind of place where people pretended to be happy behind laptops. I spotted Callista by the window, her hair perfect as ever, tapping at her phone. She didn't hug me, didn't even stand. I slid into the seat across from her and laid the papers between us. The forged property transfer and the highlighted psychological report. "Look at this," I said. "They forged my signature, and now they're threatening to expose my medical records." Her spoon clinked against her coffee cup as she stirred. She didn't look at the papers. She didn't look at me. "Callista," I said, my voice cracking. "Tell me you had nothing to do with this." Her hands tightened around the cup. For a second, I thought she might deny everything. Instead, she whispered, "I signed the paperwork." My heart stopped. "What?" She finally met my eyes, tears pooling but refusing to fall. "Dad said it was for the best, for all of us. He said you didn't want the house, that you wouldn't come back." I felt like the ground had opened up beneath me. "You knew it wasn't true," I said. "You knew I'd come back." Her lips trembled. I didn't know what else to do." There it was. My sister. The one I'd trusted to hold some piece of my family together. And she'd signed me away like I was nothing. I didn't yell, I didn't throw the coffee across the room, though my body wanted to. I gathered the papers, stood up, and walked out. In the car, I sat with my forehead pressed to the steering wheel, my chest heaving. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about the sisterhood I thought we still had. The belief that blood meant something. If even Callista could sign me away, I thought, what am I fighting for? I reached into my bag and pulled out Mom's photo. Her soft smile steadied me the way it always did. "No," I whispered. "I'm not done." Not yet. By the time I got back to the rental, my grief had hardened into something else, an ember of rage, small but burning steady. I sat at the table with a notepad and wrote down 3 names: Richard, Valora, Callista. I underlined each one twice. "You turned this into war," I said softly to the empty room. "So war it will be." They weaponized my own past against me, but they underestimated how dangerous I could be when cornered. That's when I found the one thing they didn't know I still had: my mother's words. It had been weeks since I'd dared to open that storage unit. I'd rented it before my last deployment, stuffing away whatever pieces of my life I couldn't carry with me, then avoided it when I came home. I wasn't ready for the ghosts. But that day, something drew me there. The air inside smelled of dust and old wood, like time itself had been trapped. Boxes were stacked haphazardly, but one caught my eye immediately. A medium-sized one pushed to the back, its lid marked in my mother's handwriting. "Tamra, for when you need me most." I knelt, my fingers trembling as I opened it. Inside were things I hadn't seen in years. Her scarf, still faintly scented with her favorite lilac perfume. A photograph of her holding me as a toddler, sunlight in her hair. And at the very bottom, a sealed envelope and a small USB drive. The letter was short, written in her unmistakable cursive. "Tamra, no matter what happens, this house is yours. Don't let anyone take it from you. Love, Mom." I sank to the concrete floor, reading those lines over and over until the words blurred. She'd known. Somehow she'd sensed all of this. Richard's coldness, Valora's creeping influence, and left me this as a shield. At my rental, I plugged the USB into my laptop. A folder opened with a series of video files. I clicked the first. There she was. My mother. Sitting on the old porch swing, speaking softly to the camera like she knew I'd watch someday. "I don't know who you'll be when you see this," she said, brushing her hair from her face. "But I do know Richard's been slipping away. And Valora, well, she's not here for you, baby. She's here for the house, for everything that comes with it. You need to be careful. You need to be ready." Tears rolled silently down my face, but I felt something else rising too: purpose. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't just reacting. I had a reason to fight. I needed someone who wasn't poisoned by Valora's games. Simeon came to mind. My cousin, my drinking buddy when I came home between deployments. If anyone would still have my back, it'd be him. We met that evening at a quiet bar on the edge of town. The neon sign buzzed above us, casting a sickly glow on his face as he sat nursing a whiskey. "Tamra," he greeted me cautiously. "It's been a while." "I need you," I said bluntly, sliding the documents and the printed screenshots of my psychological report across the table. "They forged my signature. They're threatening me. Simeon, this is wrong. You know it." He stared at the papers, his jaw tightening. For a moment I thought he'd agree, maybe even offer to help me take them down. Instead, he sighed and pushed the documents back toward me. "Richard asked me to oversee the paperwork with Raven Crest," he admitted. "I signed off on it too." I blinked. "You what?" "Don't look at me like that," he said, his tone defensive now. "It was a family decision. You were gone for too long. Things had to move forward." "Move forward?" My voice cracked like a whip. "By stealing my home? By cutting me out like I don't exist?" He winced but didn't back down. "You don't understand, Tamra. You left us to deal with all of this while you were off playing soldier. We did what needed to be done." My stomach turned. My own cousin. The one I'd trusted with my darkest deployment stories. The one who'd told me I was the strongest person in the family. He hadn't just betrayed me. He'd helped them legitimize it all. I walked out without another word. In the car, I sat motionless for a while, staring out at the streetlights flickering in the distance. And then, unbidden, a memory of my mother surfaced. It was a warm summer evening. I was 15, sulking on that same porch swing. She leaned down and whispered, "Valora doesn't just want to join this family. She wants to own it. And if you let her, she will." I hadn't understood then. I did now. Valora wasn't content with marrying Richard. She wanted to erase me completely, to make sure I had no claim to anything, not the house, not the family name, not even my dignity. I drove back to the rental as night fell, the USB drive still in my bag, like a lifeline. Inside, I set it on the table and stared at it for a long time. "Mom," I whispered, "I'll finish this. For us." Then I opened my laptop and began researching every legal option I could find. Attorneys who specialized in forged property transfers, investigators who could expose shell companies, anyone who could go toe-to-toe with Richard and Valora. They thought erasing me from the deed would erase me from the fight. They were wrong. But before I could fight back, Valora decided to humiliate me one last time. I didn't even plan to go there that day. It was one of those impulsive decisions born out of exhaustion and anger. I just wanted to grab a few personal things, stuff that still belonged to me no matter what papers they'd signed or what lies they'd told. It felt simple enough. I pulled into the driveway without calling ahead. The house looked strange with the "for sale" sign still out front, like it was wearing someone else's clothes. I stood on the porch, the boards creaking under my boots, staring at the door that used to feel like home. When I stepped inside, Valora was already there, standing in the hallway like she'd been waiting for me. Impeccably dressed as always, hair pinned back, pearls at her throat, the kind of woman who'd smile in your face while she drove a knife into your back. "Didn't expect you to have the nerve to come back," she said sweetly, blocking my path. "I'm not here for you," I replied, walking past her toward the living room. My eyes immediately found what I came for, the framed photo of my mother on the mantel. It was the last piece of her I could still touch, a reminder of someone who had loved me without condition. I grabbed it, but before I could take a step, Valora's hand shot out and snatched it away. "You don't deserve this," she hissed, holding it just out of reach. "You were never really part of this family. Your mother? She was weak, and so are you." Her words hit harder than any insult I'd taken in combat zones. I froze, staring at her, unable to decide whether to scream or rip the photo from her hands. "Valora," I said slowly, "give me that picture." From the stairs, Richard appeared. He didn't say a word, didn't even look at me. Just stood there, arms crossed, letting her speak for both of them. "Richard," I said, my voice breaking despite myself, "are you really going to let her talk about Mom like that?" "About me like that?" His eyes flicked toward me, empty of any warmth I remembered. "This isn't your house anymore, Tamra. Stop making scenes." Scenes, that's what he called it. Years of loyalty, sacrifice, and silence reduced to me making scenes. Valora smirked, clearly enjoying every second of my humiliation. "You heard him. Go back to whatever little life you've scraped together. Leave this place to people who know how to keep it." I didn't trust myself to say another word. If I opened my mouth, I'd either break down or lose control completely, so I turned and walked out. I don't even remember the drive. I just remember ending up in an empty parking lot, shutting off the engine and staring at my own reflection in the dark window. My hands were shaking. My chest felt like it was caving in. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was foolish to believe I still belonged anywhere near that house, or them. Maybe all my fighting, all my persistence, was pointless. I laid my forehead on the steering wheel and let the sobs come. I hadn't cried like that in years, not when I was injured overseas, not when I'd lost friends in uniform. But here, now, because of them. I thought about walking away for good. Let them have it all. Let them rot in that house that no longer felt like home. But then I saw my bag on the passenger seat. The USB drive. My mother's face in those video files, her voice saying, "Don't let anyone take this house from you." I replayed the clip right there in the car, tears drying on my cheeks as she reminded me exactly who I was fighting for. "They want me broken," I whispered to myself. "I won't give them that." I took a deep breath, wiped my face, and opened my contacts list. Scrolling through names from my old life, my finger paused on one. Ruth. We'd served together once. Now she was one of the most relentless lawyers I knew. I didn't think. I just hit call. "If my family wanted a war," I said as soon as she picked up, "I'd bring someone who knew how to fight one." Ruth didn't just answer my call. She brought the kind of firepower Valora never saw coming. We met at a small coffee shop off Abercorn Street, one of those quiet spots where conversations disappear into the hum of espresso machines and low jazz. Ruth walked in wearing a navy suit, her hair pulled back in that no-nonsense way I remembered from our deployment days. She didn't waste time on sympathy. Instead, she slid into the booth across from me, folded her hands, and said, "You didn't call to cry. You called to win." That was exactly why I'd called her. I laid out everything: how they'd stolen the house, forged my name, and dug up my military evaluation to paint me as unstable. Ruth didn't flinch. She took notes, asking sharp questions that cut straight through the fog I'd been stuck in. When I finished, she looked at me with the same calm she used to have before briefings overseas. "We freeze the title. We subpoena every document. And we don't flinch. If they forged your signature, they're not just immoral, they're criminal. You ready to go there?" "I've been ready," I said, my voice steadying for the first time in weeks. She nodded. "Then we start today." We left the coffee shop with a plan. Ruth was already calling her paralegal by the time I opened my car door. The weight that had been crushing my chest felt just a little lighter. Later that afternoon, Ruth drove me to meet someone she said could change the game. We pulled up to a small brick bungalow on the edge of town, and that's where I saw Dora, my mom's old friend. I hadn't seen her since the funeral. "Tamra," she said softly when I stepped inside, her voice carrying a warmth I hadn't felt in so long. "You look so much like her." It almost broke me. She led us to her kitchen table, where a neat stack of papers waited. "Your mother trusted me," Dora said. "She asked me to keep these safe in case Richard tried to take what wasn't his." My hands trembled as I lifted the first document, the original will. Not a copy. The notarized, witnessed will naming me the sole heir to the house. And beneath it, a sealed letter addressed to the court, written in my mother's handwriting, warning them that Richard might contest her wishes. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened, my vision blurred. It wasn't just a legal document. It was my mother reaching out from the grave to say, "I see you. I protect you." Dora touched my hand. "She wanted you to have a fighting chance, Tamra." I swallowed hard and nodded. "She gave me more than that. She gave me proof." That night, back at my rental, I spread everything across the dining table: the forged deed with my fake signature, the real will, my mother's letter, the video files from the USB, even my unedited military records. Piece by piece, I began to assemble my case like a soldier cleaning her weapon. "They took my voice in that house," I whispered to myself. "I'm taking back the whole narrative." It was past midnight when I finally leaned back, staring at the evidence covering every inch of the table. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just surviving. I was preparing to fight. I walked to the door to lock up for the night. That's when I saw it. A black SUV idling across the street, its headlights dimmed. A man in the passenger seat raised his phone, the faint glow of the screen catching his face as he snapped a photo of me. I didn't duck. I didn't run. I just stood there, staring back until he lowered the phone. Then I turned, closed the door, and locked it slowly, deliberately. They wanted me afraid, I said under my breath. But I was done living like prey. The next morning, I found out who was behind that SUV, and it wasn't just Valora. Ruth called me into her office. Her paralegal gave me a polite nod as I walked past the reception desk, but the atmosphere was different, thicker, charged. Ruth stood behind her desk, sleeves rolled up, her laptop open to a spreadsheet full of numbers. "Sit," she said, her tone clipped but not unkind. "What's going on?" I asked, lowering myself into the chair across from her. She turned the laptop toward me. "I traced the money. Ravencrest isn't just a shell company for the house, it's a funnel. Your father and Valora have been moving large sums, hundreds of thousands, through accounts tied to defense subcontractors, all under the guise of using your military clearance history as cover." The words didn't register at first. My clearance? "They used your name, your service," Ruth said. "This isn't just theft, Tamra. This is federal fraud. And if what I'm seeing is right, this could put them behind bars for a very long time." My stomach flipped. I'd been angry before, but this felt like something deeper, dirtier. "They dragged my name into their criminal mess," I said, my voice low, almost trembling. Ruth leaned forward. "Which means we have leverage, and we're going to use it." She reached into her drawer and slid a small USB drive across the desk. "But first, there's something you need to hear. It isn't easy." I took it from her, confused. "What is it?" "Then something Dora found when she was sorting through your mother's things. Play it before we go to court, but not here." Later that night, back at my rental, I sat on my bed with my laptop in front of me. The only light came from the screen. I plugged in the USB, clicked the file, and braced myself. Static. Then a voice I knew too well. "Richard." "You should have left that house to me," he said, his tone dripping with contempt. "She's too weak. Always has been. You coddled her. You made her think she was entitled to everything. And now I'm cleaning up your mess." He was talking to my mother. I couldn't breathe. My chest burned as his words kept coming, crueler with each sentence. I'd heard my father angry before, but this was different. This wasn't frustration. This was contempt for her, for me, for everything she had tried to protect. I closed the laptop and just sat there, staring into the dark, letting the sound of his voice echo in my head until the ringing in my ears drowned it out. Grief hit me first. Sharp, like broken glass. Then came the anger. It wasn't the wild, uncontrolled anger I'd felt when Valora insulted me. This was colder. He hadn't just stolen my house. He'd disrespected my mother's memory in a way that couldn't be undone. By morning, I was back at Ruth's office. We spread everything across her conference table. Dora's notarized will, the forged deed, the financial records, the recording of Richard's words. Ruth arranged them carefully, like pieces on a chessboard. "They wanted to paint you as unstable," she said, glancing up at me. "Instead, we're going to paint them as criminals." I nodded. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was just reacting. I was preparing. That evening, back at my rental, I stood in front of the mirror wearing my old service jacket. It still smelled faintly of desert sand and long days in places no one here cared to remember. I practiced my testimony out loud, hearing my own voice grow stronger with each repetition. "You silenced Mom," I whispered to the reflection staring back at me. "You won't silence me." By the time I went to bed, my hands had stopped shaking. The next time I faced them, it wouldn't be as their daughter. it would be as their accuser. And that's when I walked into the courtroom with one piece of paper that changed everything. The air inside the Savannah County Courthouse was heavy, as though everyone already sensed the reckoning that was about to unfold. I walked in wearing my old service jacket, the one Valora once mocked as just boots and scraps. It wasn't just clothing today, it was armor. I wanted them to see me for who I really was, not the weak woman they painted me to be, but a soldier who'd survived far worse than their lies. Ruth was already seated at our table, files neatly stacked in front of her, that calm, calculating expression she always wore before a fight. "You're ready," she said simply, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. Valora sat across the aisle, draped in an expensive cream suit, lips curled into that signature smirk of hers. Richard avoided my eyes, staring straight ahead like none of this concerned him. Callista. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in a month, pale, jittery, clutching a tissue like it could shield her from what was coming. The judge entered, and we all rose. My pulse hammered against my ribs, but I kept my expression steady. Valora's lawyer started first. His voice was smooth, almost oily, as he tried to spin a narrative. "Your Honor, my client and her husband have been the caretakers of this estate. Miss Maddox has been estranged from her family for years. We have evidence, documented psychological evaluations, that show she has been unfit to manage property or make sound decisions." He slid a document across to the judge with a flourish. "This report, from her military file, paints a clear picture." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. I knew exactly what it was. Those same doctored excerpts Valora had sent me as a threat. They were playing their last card, twisting my own service against me. I didn't flinch. When the judge glanced at me, I met his eyes without blinking. "Your Honor," Ruth said, rising slowly, "the defense has presented false and doctored evidence in an attempt to discredit my client, and we're here to prove it." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Do you have something to present, counselor?" Ruth gave me a small nod. My cue. I stood, my knees steady despite the storm inside me, and walked to the bench. From my folder, I pulled out one sheet of paper, the one thing my mother had left me that they didn't know existed. "This," I said, my voice clear enough to silence the room, "is the original will. Signed, witnessed, and notarized. It names me, the only daughter of Eleanor Maddox, as the sole heir to our family home. Every document they've filed claiming otherwise is a forgery." Valora's smirk faltered. I placed the paper on the judge's desk with deliberate care, then gestured to Ruth, who brought forward a binder thick with evidence. "And this," I continued, "is proof that Richard Maddox and Valora Maddox used Ravencrest Holdings to launder federal funds, using my military clearance history as cover. They didn't just steal my house. They broke the law." The courtroom was silent. Even the air felt still. The judge flipped through the binder, his face unreadable. Every second stretched on like an eternity. Finally, he looked up, his voice like steel. "Lock the doors. No one leaves." Chaos erupted. Valora shot to her feet, screeching, "This is outrageous! You can't do this!" Richard's face stayed stoic, but I saw it, the flicker of panic in his eyes. Two deputies moved quickly, cuffing them both as the judge read out charges: fraud, forgery, obstruction. Callista collapsed onto the bench, sobbing uncontrollably. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Valora thrashed against the deputies, screaming my name like a curse. "You'll regret this, Tamra. Do you hear me?" But I didn't answer. I stood by the door, watching the scene unfold, my hands folded in front of me, not gloating, not smiling, just breathing. It was over. As they were led away, I whispered, barely loud enough for myself to hear, "Mom, we did it." The house was mine again, But I didn't feel like I'd won. At least, not yet. Because winning in court didn't fix what they broke inside me. It had been a week since the courthouse erupted, but the echo of the judge's words still rang in my ears. Lock the doors. No one leaves. The news stories painted it like some dramatic takedown, Savannah's well-to-do couple exposed as criminals. But for me, it hadn't felt like victory. It had felt like ripping off a bandage and staring at the wound underneath. That morning, I drove back to the house my grandfather built. The drive felt longer than usual, like I was crossing not just miles, but years of history, pain, and unspoken memories. When I pulled up, the for sale sign was gone, and for the first time in months, the driveway didn't feel hostile. The locks had been changed back to my name. The air smelled faintly of spring, fresh, soft, new. I climbed the porch steps slowly, my hand grazing the worn wooden railing where my mother used to lean during long summer evenings, sipping iced tea, watching fireflies with me. It was like she was still here somehow, in every creak of the wood and chipped bit of paint. Across the street, a car idled. I didn't need to squint to know it was Callista. She didn't roll down the window, didn't wave, she just stared. Her face was unreadable, guilt, anger, maybe even shame, but I didn't move toward her. After a moment, she put the car in gear and drove away. No words exchanged. That was probably for the best. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. Every room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, the kind Valora loved to overuse when she wanted to impress guests. But this wasn't her space anymore. This was mine. My footsteps echoed as I walked toward the living room, carrying the framed photo of my mother I'd kept close through all of this. I placed it back on the mantel where it had always belonged. I sat on the old couch and pulled out the USB drive, the one that held my mother's video journals. The screen flickered to life, and there she was, smiling, tired-eyed, the way I remembered her near the end. Her voice filled the room. Tamra, no matter what happens, this house is yours. Don't let anyone take it from you. Her words weren't just instructions. They were an anchor, a reminder that this wasn't just about bricks and land. This was about who I was, who she raised me to be. They didn't, Mom, I whispered, tears threatening but not falling. They never will. My phone buzzed with a message from Ruth. Richard and Valora are being held without bail. Assets frozen. We'll prep for the sentencing hearing soon. I stared at the text for a long time before setting the phone aside. Callista's name crossed my mind. Ruth had asked me if I wanted to pursue legal action against her too. I'd thought about it. God, I'd thought about it. But in the end, I told Ruth no. My sister would live the rest of her life knowing she'd sold me out for convenience, and that was punishment enough. Sometimes justice wasn't about making them hurt. It was about making yourself whole again. The next few hours passed slowly as I wandered through each room, letting the silence speak. The kitchen where my mom taught me to make her pecan pie. The hallway where my father used to hang my school photos, long since taken down. Even the backyard, where my grandfather planted azaleas that still bloomed in perfect pink clusters. As the sun began to set, I walked outside with my mother's photo in one hand, wearing my uniform jacket. It felt strange but right, like I'd finally come full circle. I stood on the porch, facing the street, breathing in the cool evening air. They erased me from paper. They tried to erase me from memory, I said quietly, not to anyone in particular, maybe to her, maybe to myself. But I am still here, and I'm not leaving. The breeze carried away my words, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was holding my breath anymore. I didn't win back a house. I won back myself.